Hello and welcome to another episode of Casual Friday. I'm back with the duck, who's slowly but surely fighting off whatever illness has ravaged him over the past couple of weeks. The illness took the market with it, but as he's recovered, so has the market. Is there some sort of weird correlation going on, Don, here? Are you the only thing holding this market up? As soon as you even go a bit AFK, the whole thing starts to unwind?
Well, I don't talk like that, otherwise I'll get assassinated by the bears on Twitter. They're gonna put on hits on me and they're gonna kill me. I don't know, but it's been quite funny because the moment I got really sick, it's actually like that was the top, and then it dropped like a bomb, and then the moment I actually started feeling better, that was the exact peak of bottom. So maybe who knows what's behind it.
I'm just going to be sending you anthrax in the mail and then timing it with trades. Although there is a simple solution to avoiding these types of illnesses. Just stop putting your face in glory holes, and I'm sure like 80% of it would go away. I know you find that particularly difficult as a lifestyle adjustment, but it
No,
might
I
be worth
mean,
it.
what kind of life is that? I mean,
True.
you cannot, like, at some point, some risks are worth taking, and that one, I mean, I wouldn't want to live
Yeah,
without
but
it.
every weekend.
Yes. I mean,
Fair
I'm
enough.
already being careful. Every weekend, I could do it every day.
True. Yeah, this is your form of moderation.
Exactly.
Terrible. Let's talk about the markets. We didn't get a chance to
Mhm.
do it last Friday, obviously. So here we are. If you enjoy the return of Casual Friday, leave us a like on the video. We'll try not to get sick. I made a video yesterday. I was like, oh, we'll try not to miss them in the future. And then I paused and said, wait, we have no control over that. Like, if one of us gets sick, I'm not going to be able to like force the issue. In any
Yeah.
case, to good health and all that type of stuff. As far as the monthly goes, it's pushing up. And for you, the important signal was the close above 20K. And I guess we'll get a clearer view in 11 days as to how the monthly closes. I think the weekly is probably the most relevant time frame for what's going on right now. The
Yeah.
weekly and the daily, probably.
Yeah.
Um,
Something real quick about the monthly
sure.
is that it's actually really strong that we're not red yet. I mean, if you compare it to the S&P, that's been doing shit. The dollar's been struggling, and still the monthly looks good, which is a really good sign, I think. But we'll see closer towards the closing date, which is in 11 days. So if that doesn't change, this is like a really nice. I mean, I kind of expected it to be a little bit weaker even, and it's been strong. So it'd be a nice surprise if we held up like this.
I mean, I'll just wait for the yearly close to be safe. That's how we do things around here. On the weekly time frame, we finally got that push into the actual weekly range high, right? It's kind of been the market's been threatening that, it feels like, for a while. It's the highest close of the summer range at 24.3. It even went as far as spiking the high of that consolidation, just above 25K. And there was a reaction to it. But nothing too crazy or decisive yet. Is there any way this weekly close could sort of freak you out or flip your bias or do anything other than okay, maybe a shallow pullback or whatever else? Because if you just look at this chart in isolation, it's just at the top of the weekly range, right? Is there anything there that could provide some sort of signal, be it for a reversal or trade management, or is your thesis still that this is monthly continuation at the 30? If it needs a couple of pit stops and bumps along the way, that's fine, but probably not enough to shift market structures. Like, what do you think of this range high in general?
Yeah, I mean, we're clearly struggling with it a little bit, but I didn't really like it on the first test. I was like, maybe it'll produce something, but I wouldn't want to bet on it. And then we kind of had like the two pullback weeks.
Yeah.
A lot of people I've seen, like, I mean, I was sick for this time, but a lot of people on Twitter seem to get really bearish on that, which is quite nice to see. I actually like that. Oh, Jesus Christ, sorry about that. And yeah, I think I don't really think anything is gonna change my view on this one. It's a good level, but we've tested it before. So I'm gonna be bullish as long as we're trading above 20K. Anything other than that is not gonna shift my bias in any meaningful capacity. If anything, I'm looking for signs to get even more bullish rather than like being worried about anything. Like right now, this move has been a really welcome one. We front ran supports, which is always good in a FOMO led rally. Like this is kind of like exactly what I wanted. you have good supports, you front run them with like kind of bouncing from the shitty supports and not giving a good entry. I like it. So for me, nothing's changed. I'm still bullish. I think that weekly resistance is gonna go eventually.
Yeah, you mentioned also in one of your live streams that if it breaks the weekly and then falls back within it, that would actually be the first signal where you're like, okay, I should probably take this seriously. Do you still hold that view? So, for example, like a weekly close or just moving through 24.3K on a weekly basis and then closing back inside it, right? And then that would kind of be the range high equivalent of what we had at the range low, where we moved
Yes.
below it, closed above. That was a good signal. So presumably, if you move above it and close below, would you take that as seriously as you did at support?
I think that could be the way for me to close the position, yeah.
Okay.
Because then I think like if we close above 24 and don't really break out properly, I think we might have to reload lower, as in kind of like have a proper rally, not one that is led by people that don't have a position, just having to get one. Which basically just means if we go up and then don't go properly up and come back down again, I think we might actually just build some proper market structure, go sideways for a while. So maybe I'd get to rebuy 19K. Right now, like my thesis is, okay, this is just a FOMO-led rally. A bunch of people need to get into positions because they haven't been. And if we do that, it might change into, okay, we've got a really nice bottoming signal and like a bottoming structure, and we'll see how that kind of translates into stuff later on.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, it's fairly consistent, right? Like range low failed breakout was a good enough signal on the weekly, and range high failed breakout, if it happens, will also be kind of worth taking account of. I think this might be one of those situations that lends itself well to your self-reported 50 IQ breakout approach. Whereas like, if it breaks out, like it's a breakout, kind of treat it at one up until it clearly fails. And then you can shift your bias as opposed to trying to interpret in advance what it's going to do, right?
Yes.
Kind of give the breakout a chance, be it to the upside or the downside. Then if it deviates, usually the move that follows is big enough to let you catch it, even if you didn't snipe the top or the bottom.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. And then as far as continuation targets, I posted a chart on Twitter, which was a mistake, by the way. Like in general, like I had to remind myself as to why I don't post much market commentary on Twitter, because the people on there, man, some of the replies I got for just posting like the weekly range and some levels, like absolutely visceral. Such unpleasant so-called people to interact with that I was like,
Yeah.
okay, I will keep just talking about random stuff and attempts at humor and comedy, because that just wasn't a nice experience. I swear just TA attracts the worst people ever. I mean, you and I are prime examples of this, obviously, but like in general, if you tweet TA, it just seems like the average audience member, at least this year, who engages with it, they're not sending their best to quote a former president, whose NFTs you hold in abundance. So you should be very familiar with that. But presumably, range breakout, I mean, 30K, right? Like if this weekly range breakout sticks or forms at the time of recording, it would also be a breakout on the monthly, and then 30K is the real kind of trouble area for that. Presumably that's unchanged.
Yeah, 32K, round about there,
Yeah.
just good enough for me. At that point, I'll probably sell stuff or start at least booking some profits, because it's been quite the rally. I could see it go to higher, honestly. It's kind of funny because when I was posting about maybe we're gonna go back to 60K at 16K, I got a lot of hate for it, and I think if you got to 30K, you're gonna see a lot of that, right? You're gonna see a lot of people being like, oh, but maybe 60K, and this just goes to show how this kind of works, right? People cannot fathom swing trades, right? Or like in general, big swings. Just doesn't work for some reason for a lot of people in their brains. They're just like this. We're trading so low, we cannot go high, or we're trading so high, we cannot go low. But that's never the case, right?
Yes.
You can always, and especially in crypto, you can always go like times 5, times 10, but you can also always go down 95%. Just how this market works.
And you have to act surprised every time it happens.
Yes.
Especially if you're an institutional exchange, lender, whatever, apparently, as we learned last year. Cool. All of that makes sense. I'm not sure there's a ton of color to add on lower time frames. I mean, the daily is just pretty much the same, right? Spike and at the range high. Breakout maybe finally fill Don's 3AC gap as opposed to him getting filled in the glory hole gap and then, objective achieved at that point. Also, it's funny that you mentioned that above 30K, you'll see arguments for 60K. I think that's very likely should the market get there. Funnily enough, I could actually see some of those arguments being sort of rooted in TA, where they'll say, well, look, the range was 30K to 60K, right? And we're at 30K. If we reclaim that, that's the range low. The target is the range high. And then, people just lose their minds at that point. But we can take it one level at a time. And yeah, I think a monthly plus weekly breakout, pretty much take that seriously. And if it deviates, you get all the pullback levels you want and more, most likely. Let's talk about ETH very briefly. And also, this will be a shorter episode because we're obviously lazy and take all the comments seriously. I mean, that's not true. Don just isn't feeling terribly well. And it doesn't help that I have nothing to offer as always. So I'm asking him all the questions, thus even shortening the episode even more than it would under ordinary circumstances. The ETH weekly continues to be somewhat unhelpful, I think. Like the monthly level is still good as far as the range high goes. Like if you want like that type of pivot breakout level boundary, it's the monthly 1680 level that's good. On the weekly, the good thing that the helpful part that we wrote about in Technical Roundup, prletter.com for our free newsletter, is like, look, the bigger pullback levels are like around 1400, but you should definitely watch previous week's low, right? So if you're going to get shallow kind of pullbacks that don't retest the higher time frame, more visible structures, like a low time frame, shallow failed breakout will be kind of enough to facilitate a move higher if the market's particularly horny, which is a technical term. And in this case, like for previous week's low, both on BTC and ETH, that's kind of where we saw spikes and the market reverse, which is quite cool. So I think it's just nice to have those levels in general, even if you don't trade them every single time. Previous week's high, previous week's low, previous day's high, previous day's low. If you're looking for short-term stitch-ups or to look for aggression that goes unrewarded that can give you a bit of a pop in the other direction, those tend to be quite good levels, especially if they make contextual sense, like on this occasion. So for ETH, it's like, 1680 is the monthly level. If you look at it on the weekly, it's kind of just been Spike City, right? No close above yet. On the daily, it's pretty much the exact same story. It's just wick, and no actually not a single daily close above it yet, which is kind of crazy if you think about it, and given the number of tests. If you go down to the 4 hour, yesterday's push was the closest the market came to looking like a real breakout, and that breakout failed, right? So we sort of the 4 hour got nuked into the close and is now back below the level. So given we're at this monthly range high, no weekly or daily close above it yet that has stuck. Is there enough evidence here for you to say, well, look, this is a failed breakout at high time frame resistance, so I don't like it? Or is this for you just kind of, hey, this level's been tested so many times, it's going to break eventually, whatever, fuck it, that's not going to be the top?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's pretty much that. I just look at the weekly time frame, and I drew in the all-time high back in 2018. And that's kind of where we stopped the dump last week. That's where we bounced from. And as long as that support, this just looks good to me. Like, I don't think if you start falling below it, I think you could argue like a failed breakout, failed anything. But as long as we're trading above 1540, I don't really see a good reason to be bearish. Now, I will admit that this is a shit chart. Like, I said this for weeks and weeks, and we've said this for weeks and weeks. It's just shit. Like, the ETH chart, the ETH structure, it's not the prettiest in the world, right? It hugged support for ages before moving up, where like you would have, if you're a sensible human being, you would have to be kind of cautious because, I mean, just like when you have a support like that and you just hug it so tightly, that's where you have to be a little bit cautious usually.
You need to find a girl like that, bro. You feel me? Like... I'll just show. She's like, "What's your love language?" I show her the ETH chart. I'm like, "This is what I need."
Oh god!
Just a bunch of edging at resistance, and then hug me close. Anyway, I'm gonna shut the fuck up. What were you saying?
Jesus Christ! But yeah, I still like it. I don't like the charts, but I like the price levels and I like the targets. Yes, and I like the tech. Yes, so ETH looks good. I think Bitcoin is the best looking one, just because it's so clean, and everything else is just kind of like meh. But it's meh in a good way, which is good enough for me. So I'm holding my ETH. I'm definitely holding my Bitcoin until like 30K ish, if I get that. And then we will see. And I still have my Litecoin position that I'm also not gonna sell anytime soon, I think.
Nice. If someone came to you and said, "Hey, I just learned TA from Cred's videos," and you're like, "Oh God, I'm gonna have to correct so much from this kid," and he says, "Well, BTC looks like it's at resistance. ETH looks like it's at resistance. Should I be bearish here?" What's your immediate elevator response?
I mean, just have some balls, my friend. No, I mean, honestly, I get
You're
it.
like, "Thank you for the entry liquidity."
I mean, kind of like the thing is, the high time frame chart for Bitcoin, right? The monthly looks so fucking good to me. It's like the typical kind of reclaim setup that I just have to be bullish. Like I cannot be bearish on that. And anytime you faded the monthly on Bitcoin in recent history, I think has been you losing money, right? Like as in not you, but like
Well, me
everyone
too,
that
but
has done it. So like for me, I'm just going to be bullish into resistance. That's because one, I'm swing trading and I don't want to just close into every resistance.
yeah,
There's a lot of resistances on the way up, and if you want to have a trade that actually goes the distance, you just kind of have to sometimes be like, okay, I'm not gonna close even though we're at resistance. And this could come back to bite me, right? Like I'm not saying I'm 100% correct all of the time. I could be very much wrong, and this is resistance. We're gonna nuke from here, but I'm willing to take the risk.
nice. Yeah, so basically, monthly conviction, fuck everything else, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Sweet.
I think in general, like, and I mean, this is always gonna be when I'm in a swing trade, right? I'm just gonna be like very simple minded. I'm gonna be like, okay, I mean, I have a reason to be in this trade, and then my bias is gonna be very straightforward too, right? I have a very straightforward invalidation, and I will stick with that if I can, because if you get a good entry on crypto and you have like a vision for it to go a little bit higher, then sometimes it's just worth not necessarily trading it too much, but just sticking around, seeing if you can milk it for all it's worth. And I think hopefully we're in that kind of environment. Usually, I mean, if you just look back through time on the Bitcoin chart, there's a lot of times where we are in that environment, right? I mean, just looking at it from 2016, that bubble, and then we had the massive bubble in 2020, obviously aided by the whole COVID thing. But in general, like even if you zoom out more, like this asset has just gone up, 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 and when I see something like a macro bottom possibility, I will try to stick around for a while, and that's what I'm doing. Like this could, if this consolidates for 3-4 months near like supports, maybe I'll reconsider. But I want to give this at least like a quarter if I can,
Yeah.
to kind of let my high time frame thesis play out.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Like someone in a monthly swing trade is going to look at levels differently from someone day trading versus someone, 4 hour range trading and so on and so forth, right?
I mean, yeah, the funny thing is, technically, if you're trading like the 4 hour, if you're kind of like weirded out that I'm just like, oh, I don't care about the resistance or whatever, then just think about it this way, right? If you're trading the 4 hour, you entered on the candle, right? And that candle just closed, and that's exactly where we are right now on the monthly, right? I entered the trade on the monthly. The candle opened. I basically bought. I bought a little bit before, but anyway. And I'm one candle into my trade, right?
Yes.
And it'd be kind of weird to adjust too much at that point, because one candle doesn't really give you too much insight, or in general isn't even close to where you, like no one enters the trade and it's like, okay, the next candle close has to be my target. Like that makes no sense. And it might sound odd because people are like because everyone's used to trading the lower time frames, but if you just look on the monthly and you're like, oh, well, the candle opened, it closed, it's much higher now than when it was then it opened, but it's still, this could still take 6 more candles, 7 more candles to target, or maybe even more.
I mean, Litecoin was a good example of that, right? Like a monthly swing trade.
Yes.
The emotional roller coaster that the lower time frame traders might have felt, compared to just trading the monthly time frame, that kind of has all of that. The difference is shown there quite clearly. And also,
Yes.
there's like a big difference in, like, for example, you and I have discussed the difference between levels that you want to short versus levels where you want to take profit. And then, what levels are relevant when you're day trading versus what relevant levels are relevant when you're swing trading. Like, there's so much variety there.
Yes.
And so it becomes very weird if you start sort of making arguments against one person or another's positioning without actually knowing what their underlying trade thesis is, the time frame for it, what their entry is, and all that other stuff. So, yeah, all of that makes sense. We will talk about Litecoin briefly. It's at 99.23. 100 is coming across as adamantium resistance, Don.
Oh, yeah.
When will you give up? That's the only question.
I'm honestly happy with my Litecoin as long as it's kind of performing as well as ETH is doing, and it's kind of been doing that. It's been sideways against ETH, like it popped massively against ETH and sideways now. Because Bitcoin's been outperforming both, right? Bitcoin's been outperforming ETH, Bitcoin's been outperforming Litecoin, at least depending on, I mean, it all depends on your, like, where you basically start. Because, I mean, if you kind of look at Litecoin back in October, it outperformed Bitcoin massively and it's still up massively from there, right?
Yes.
So it depends kind of on where you're looking at. But yeah, it's kind of struggling with 100. But honestly, like, if it struggles with 100 for a while, it just kind of like hugs that resistance. I think the pop's gonna be that much better. So I'm not gonna give up anytime soon. I actually like the chart a lot. It's obviously a little bit frustrating when you see that Bitcoin's just outperforming everything, and you're just kind of like, okay, if I just bought Bitcoin, or at least for me, because my Litecoin is still up against Bitcoin from where I bought it. But for me, it's kind of like, okay, I could have traded this around like 4, 5, 6 times and made a bunch more money. But at the end of the day, I just don't want to be out of this position. So I'm not going to give up. I think 100 is going to give eventually. And I'm hoping for a big pop that kind of gets people excited again. We've seen this before. Litecoin's been the exciting trade like 2 times before.
Huge sample size.
Yeah, I mean, it's
For
been more
crypto,
than
at least.
yeah, I mean, for altcoins in crypto,
Yeah, I know,
yes.
that's massive. Yeah, that's like a fucking relic.
Yeah. So I'm kind of like, I'm holding on. I'm glad I have some Bitcoin. That makes the whole waiting period nicer, because
Yeah,
then
that's
I can be excited when Bitcoin goes up because I'm making money on the Bitcoin front. I can be excited when Litecoin goes up because, I mean, I have enough. Like, it's important to have a little bit of a balance, because you don't want to necessarily nuke your position, because you kind of cannot take the pain from Bitcoin just outperforming anymore. I've seen a lot of people do this in the last cycles. I don't want to be that guy. So for me, I have Bitcoin, I have Litecoin. It's struggling with 100, but I think that's gonna go. And then if it goes, I think it could easily. Honestly, I think it could easily double. So from 100 to 200 doesn't seem too unlikely. It's not that big of a move for an altcoin, but given that Litecoin felt like a really, really safe play, I could go quite big in it. Because I've seen a lot of people in the comments and stuff being like, oh, you should have bought this and that shitcoin. You'd have made so much more. But the thing is, like, if you give me like a shitty coin that is scary to hold, because you're like, this could go to zero at any point, I'm never gonna go decent size in it, right? Like, you're gonna buy like what, like a couple ETHs worth of like a coin that you think has good chance to go to zero, and it does, like, it's 10x, 15x, and you're happy about it. But you cannot just go full size into like something that you don't trust, right? Because you're always going to dump it at the bottom. So given I trust Litecoin on that front, at least, it's been a relatively easy trade. And yeah, as long as it keeps on in the ballpark of Bitcoin, I'm happy.
I don't know, bro. You're talking about these being scared of certain coins. These AI gems I've been uncovering on my alt
Oh,
account and shilling the 2 million market caps. The tech has been rapidly improving. So
oh
they're
yeah.
clearly some projects with great fundamentals out there. And no liquidity, but great fundamentals. The
Oh,
two aren't related whatsoever. Cool. That makes sense. Any other alts that you find interesting? I did Altcoin Thursdays yesterday, which is always. By the way, that show is. I've decided that it's useful, not because anything I say in the show is useful, but it's always the fucking Pico top when I talk about altcoins. There have been 2 episodes and 2 Pico tops that have come from Altcoin Thursdays, so that's kind of done its job there as far as being helpful goes. But I talked about Aptos, DYDX, Phantom. Those are the couple of ones we covered in Technical Roundup. OP, Solana, Frax.
oh yeah. I
Any
like Solana, by the way.
You like Solana?
Yeah, I mean, just on the weekly Bitcoin front, I think we're finally in the area of support. Um, if you just go to the left, basically on the 28th of June, that weekly candle, the green one, that's
Oh,
been
fine.
resistance, and that's probably gonna turn into support. So I like it against Bitcoin here. I think there's a chance that it might outperform, and the USD pair has pulled back a little bit, but not that strongly. I still like it. I don't have a position. I probably will not have a position. I'm just kind of lazy right now, just trying to get over my sickness, but I
I'm
like
sure this
it.
is helping.
Yeah. But yeah, there's a few coins that I like. It's just I think the clearest setup is still like with the coins that I hold. So I'm not necessarily switching around,
Yeah.
but I like a bunch. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a bunch going on. So the vol has certainly been there. Maybe Lido can finally break out on the weekly. That would be
Oh,
cool.
I mean, Lido looks excellent. So it's $3 right now,
Yeah.
which has been basically the resistance, like 2.75 has
Yeah.
been the resistance where it's been getting smacked down. I actually tried to buy it when I was super sick and I got front ran, so it's gonna go to infinity now.
Good to know.
This is literally how it always goes when I try to buy something. If I don't get filled, it's gonna go to infinity. If I get filled, it's gonna be it's gonna go up still, but it's gonna be underperforming everything else, and I'm just gonna be sitting there coping. But
Then
it
it
is
sounds
what
like
it
a good
is.
problem to have. All things considered.
All things considered, I'm not complaining. Yeah.
Exactly. Well, yeah, good. Final bits. And you have been a famous legacy fudder at this point, saying that it doesn't matter, lol, macro, etc., etc. Have you been looking at these charts at all? Because the last Casual Friday, you said that you'd consider. I mean, it didn't age very well, but you said you'd consider not making fun of bears anymore. You lasted like 2 days. You called this fake ceasefire, armistice, whatever you want to call it, because the S&P was at sort of weekly resistance, the
Yes.
41, 4200 level. Dollar was at support. Nasdaq, same weekly resistance. I mean, those levels are holding for the time being.
Yeah. The funny thing is, like all of this played out. It's just the bears in crypto got fucked anyway, which is a great pleasure for me. I love to see it.
Right.
So yeah, I mean the S&P resistance held, the dollar bounced, all of it is playing out like we talked about. It's just the Bitcoin bears are not particularly happy anyway,
Do
which
you see that as relative strength, and
oh yeah.
or how bad does it need to get for you to start caring and say, okay, we've shrugged off like this much correlation to the downside, but if it gets much worse, then like it's unlikely we shake it off? Or are you in this full like fuck macro, fuck you, all the bad stuff happened, we shook it off, send it type of mentality?
Basically that, yeah.
Yeah, I thought so. Yeah, I thought so. Fine. Yeah.
I'm honestly like if it giga dumps, then yeah, we're in trouble. But I don't think it will. I think it's probably gonna go sideways. Maybe in between, like the S&P, maybe in between 4.1K and 3.9, like somewhere in that range. And I
Yeah.
don't think that's enough to take us out. We've been showing relative strength, and as long as that is around, I'm not going to be bearish. And I don't want to be getting sidetracked by just like random moves in the S&P. Doesn't make much sense to me.
That sounds like you
Yes.
haven't been listening to your macro podcast, Don.
Yeah, I think the macro thing has stopped anyway.
Okay.
So like a bunch of people pretending to be macro experts, they're gonna embarrass themselves. Have already. So yeah, I don't think there's much to discuss there. I mean, obviously it still matters, but we've seen like basically people arguing that you cannot have the market go up because macro is bad. And then one macro went up, which is quite funny because we had a bunch of people basically saying, I mean, like the markets are just completely cooked, and then everything bounced. And then two, we've seen a massive crypto rally, even though macro has not really been supportive. So both of those theses kind of got blown out of the water, which I think was over time. Like that should have happened a while ago. And yeah, as long as we don't necessarily completely pull in line again, and the only way that I could see that is the S&P like really, really dumping. We're good on that front. I don't think it matters too much.
Everyone catching strays on this casual Friday with Don on his final legs, just, machine gun, Scarface style, everyone. Macro experts, bears, correlation traders, altcoin people, no one is safe, it seems. Not even me. We'll zoom through some news, I think, now that we've done the main chart stuff. Again, slightly shorter episode, but hopefully Don's health permitting, we'll be back in full force next Friday. This one, Merit Peak, firm at heart of Reuters report, operated on Binance US exchange, admits. So more Binance, it's more Binance in the headlines, essentially. The first with Paxos stopping the issuance of new BUSD. And now this news about the US entity and basically the flow of funds to allegedly CZ-owned companies and all this type of stuff. I don't know how much you've kept up with it. But yeah, it just seems like the Bloomberg-Reuters duo who really don't like Binance. So let's just say report report a fair bit on that specific exchange, coming out with more stories. The issue is, like, optically, this sucks for our industry because it just keeps reinforcing what average people believe, that crypto is just this big offshore commingled black box with no transparency. It's avoided regulation for so long. All the offshore stuff is dodgy, and even the US arms are dodgy as well. So it's all garbage, basically. And even what should be tightly regulated products like stablecoins, they're like either securities or market whatever money, mutual funds, and the whole infrastructure just seems super flimsy. We've also seen the SEC finally sue Terraform Labs and Do Kwon. Is just, as far as optics and public perception goes, I mean, price is one thing, but we're not winning any battles on the political side of crypto, if you will.
Oh yeah, I mean, our poster child turned out to be a scammer on the biggest level. So yeah, honestly, it's really hard to argue with them, in my opinion. Like all of these news agencies and all these politicians and all that kind of shit, and that kind of shit talk crypto. Like a couple of years ago, I would have been like, oh, fuck them. Like they don't get it. But it's really hard for me to argue nowadays because just from what we've seen, it's just basically is how they're saying it is, right? Like I'm not saying this is like there's something shady going on Binance, whatever. It's not the case. I'm just saying in general, like every time we've kind of gotten like shitty commentary, in the end, it's kind of been turning out to be right, and that's hard to discuss. Like it's hard to be the defender of crypto in the sense.
Yes.
So I'm just gonna be like, every time I get these kind of news and I see like people shit talking crypto, I'm like, oh, it's kind of warranted. It makes sense to me. Like I get where they're coming from. I still think they're gonna have fun staying poor, basically. But I totally get, like, I don't think they're necessarily wrong on a lot of these things. It's a shitty industry with shitty people in it, and a lot of people are just scamming left and right. And even the funny thing is the scammers are even celebrated to an extent.
Yes.
Until it all goes up in flames and everyone's like, should have, like, I hated him from the start, and it's kind of like, I don't know.
Now that price went down, I've changed my view.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, I agree. It's just been a rough year, and I totally understand the subsequent beatings we're going to get from politicians, the public, regulators. It's mostly deserved at this stage.
Yes, I think so too.
Unfortunately. And yeah, SEC charges Terraform and Do Kwon post Terra collapse, and there's a bunch of also additional allegations about him cashing out a lot of money basically into Swiss bank accounts. There's stuff about jump trading, making over like $1 billion from a few trades and from defending the peg. And yeah, that document is a very interesting read. I mean, the Luna blow up was colossal. It's just quite interesting if you look at the string of regulatory actions from the SEC. Like, how many investors have they actually protected from the fallout of 2022? Right? It's like
Yes.
not that many. It's
Also
like
very true.
it's essentially like when the cops show up after you've been robbed repeatedly, you know, and every time like they get away with all your shit and then the cops show up. It's like, well, especially if you're not getting your stuff back. It's like, well, what good is that? Like, yeah, you file a report and something happens to maybe prevent future robberies or not. We don't know. But none of this was remotely timely, right? FTX. I mean, FTX is almost like very, very close to the SEC and other regulatory bodies, if anything. So that on its own just kind of crosses out the argument. So like GBTC is a garbage product, and there's no regulatory path to an alternative, or not one that's being presented. Attack on staking, even with very reputable exchanges like Kraken and the whole. You know, that's very unfriendly and has a chilling effect on businesses which even want to have any type of US presence, as has been the case for a while. Stablecoins, which are kind of the one useful thing we've come up with, getting hammered as well as securities. No protection from Celsius, no protection from Voyager, Luna, FTX, like 3AC, you know, slightly different. But yeah, like the track record isn't great. And it's always easy to regulate after the fact, right? Like you don't do anything preventatively, everyone gets wrecked and loses their money, and then you come in and say, aha, look, well, we're gonna sue them now. It's like, well, what good is that to me, you know? having if you've lost your money on that platform. So while I completely understand the political impetus that the SEC and other regulatory agencies have now, given how much we fucked up as an industry last year, it's like the timing of it doesn't give me any faith in those regulatory agencies having any competence to prevent future harm before it happens, as opposed to after the fact for political points.
I mean, very much agree. I think the criticism that gets thrown around at the SEC and pretty much everyone that's kind of like now pretending like they care so much is also very warranted, right? Because they've been completely and utterly useless. And it's not the first time, right? It's not even the first time in crypto. They've just been in general like very useless from what I've seen in general. But especially in crypto, it's kind of funny when you have like them protecting the public from what are you protecting them? Because yeah, always, like you said, they always show up after the fact, and they let the Ponzi's grow massive, and then they let them implode, and then half a year later they're there being like, oh yeah, shouldn't have done that. And it's like, well, this is fucking useless.
I mean, they
And,
got Bidslater though, so maybe it's break even after all.
I mean, finally,
you take down a behemoth like that. Yeah, I can look past and forget everything else.
Yeah, it's a struggle, honestly, and it's kind of sad to see because, especially America, right? America has been kind of like very, very crypto unfriendly, and I would argue that the regulation has done more, like way more harm than it's protected anyone, because the bad actors don't give a shit and they just do it anyway, and the good actors just get sued left and right and cannot do whatever they want to do. And then you kind of have this shitty situation where everyone loses. The good actors are like getting punished for trying to do good, and the bad actors get rewarded for doing bad, and the customers get completely fucked because they just try to kind of navigate this market in any capacity. It's just it's a sad state of affairs.
That just seems like a perfect crypto summary in general, to be honest with you. Like, yeah, I agree. And it'd just be weird and unfortunate if the US fumbles completely as far as crypto policy goes. Like especially if you look at the stablecoin sector, like I can understand the legal argument for those being securities. Like I can on a purely sort of formalist, and if you take the current framework and simply blanket apply them to stablecoins, like I get it. But also stablecoins have done so much for like the US dollar in general. Like if you become the de facto global settlement currency for crypto outside of like Ether, Bitcoin, and like actual cryptocurrencies, like out of all the world currencies, if you have dollar dominance in the billions to the extent that we have it now, that's like a pretty good position to be in, you know, compared to having the euro or the yuan or whatever else. Like that's a good thing. Like the dollarized, like the US should welcome to an extent that type of dollarization for such an ecosystem. So if you just fumble that lead, that would be, I think, quite short sighted, to be honest with you. But I guess we'll see. Yeah, we talked about this. Binance transferred $400 million from US partner to Zhao run firm. Reuters says, I'm sure we'll just hear more about this. But also, like, we've seen like a lot of these US entities, they, as you mentioned, because of those same regulatory hurdles, they're just put in such an impossible position. I always get sent by the kind of lists that you see, even on like front end DeFi protocols. Whereas like we don't welcome customers. It's always like Iran, Venezuela, North Korea, and then it's like the United States of America, and it's like, come on, like how did we get here?
Yes.
And yeah, and I think it's fairly well known that at least in the past, a lot of US users have come up with, let's say, creative ways to avoid using the US registered entities when trading crypto. And so again, that's a loss because those volumes are going offshore, going elsewhere, as opposed to paving like a decent, accessible, not completely sort of legally burdensome and expensive way for US customers to like interface with crypto. It's just barrier after barrier, no good solution. And as you mentioned, even good companies that try to play ball by the rules, they just end up getting sued, and they aren't rewarded for trying to be good faith actors. And in those types of circumstances, bad faith actors always rise to the top. And yeah, SEC action against Paxos paints regulatory target on stablecoins. Nick Carter also wrote an article about how this just seems to be across regulatory agencies a full-on effort to constrict crypto from accessing banking and just severing the connection between crypto and the real economy. And I think that would just suck. That would be really bearish. Because if these assets that you hold kind of lose that part of their liquidity profile, that you can cash it out, and also that you can invest your real money into the crypto ecosystem and take it out. Like if you lose that rail and lose that fungibility, then at the very least in the short term that would be very bearish, right? Because I don't think we've built enough like crypto infrastructure to be entirely self-contained, for lack of a better term. I mean, even the most basic example, we don't have that many super reliable like crypto stablecoins, right? I don't even want to say algorithmic stablecoins, and even some of the crypto stablecoins, they hold a lot of like USDC, for example, right? So if that crackdown went the whole way, those like DAI and Maker, whatever else, they wouldn't exactly be safe, so to speak. So now people are arguing, oh well, we should have algorithmic stablecoins. I saw this argument, and Luna had the right idea, but I mean clearly technologically we're not there yet. So I think if we get rugged on sort of fiat payment rails now, that would suck because we just haven't done enough groundwork to survive without fiat payment rails. And I actually think we're a very long way away from that. And I don't think even that's necessarily a desirable end goal. That might be a controversial opinion, but like I get pretty tired of how circular crypto is. And how it's just sort of crypto, like tokens to stablecoins to tokens to stablecoins, and there's no sort of link to the real economy, for lack of a better term. And I think building that out would be a plus, as opposed to going full sort of libertarian isolationist and saying, well, we've got our own cypherpunk ecosystem and, fuck fiat, basically. I can sympathize with the vision. I just don't think the infrastructure is anywhere close to being there. Don't know what you think about any of that philosophically.
No, I agree. I mean, it's just kind of shit. So if we lose the way to cash out, I think we lose most of the value that's in crypto, and it just kind of suck. I don't really subscribe to the fact that we're just gonna be our own contained space and everything, we can do everything ourselves. Like this is just not how I see it working. It throws back years. I think in general, like if they attack stablecoins, it's one of the worst thing they can do for the industry, because it's basically the blood that runs through the crypto veins, right? Yes. Everything's fueled by stablecoins nowadays, and as we have seen with Luna, like you said, the algo stablecoins. I mean, it's a meme, right? In almost every circle that I kind of frequent, if you just say algo stablecoins, people start making fun of it, because it's always gone wrong. So I don't know. I'm not really in team algo stablecoin. It just doesn't make much sense to me. Just given the history, like I wouldn't want to put my money in there. I don't really understand why anyone would. Like, you guys do your thing, make it run for like 5 years, and maybe I'll start trusting it. But until then, I'd
But the
rather
yield,
have.
bro, the yield.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny because the people that have been like saying, "Oh, the yield," they've kind of realized where the yield was coming from nowadays, right?
Yes.
Because they've been drained left and right. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Weird of you to take it back to the glory hole conversation, but that's fine. I'll follow along. Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, also, look, if we're being completely intellectually honest, like an outsized portion of the crypto ecosystem in its current form is used explicitly for speculation and virtually very few other things, right? It's like there's a huge chunk of it that's speculation. And if you cut off the whole putting money in and cashing out real dollars, you kill a huge portion of that entire speculative endeavor. Like that's not good. I saw my favorite Jeff Dorman from Arca, who couldn't fucking come up with a good take. If I don't even know, I'm just gonna be charitable here. I disagree with him on many things across many things. I'm really struggling here, Don. But in any case, let's say we don't always see eye to eye. I'll put it that way, and then as soon as the stream ends, I'll go on some unhinged rant. In any case, he of course had something to say about this as far as the stablecoin regulation stuff. I'm just reading off my phone here. By the way, my response to this tweet was just Lamau, because I mean, what else could you say? And he said the following. Think of it this way. Right now, when you use digital assets, you know you have a safety net to convert back to dollars. If that safety net goes away, you stop thinking in dollar terms redemptions and start thinking about utility within the system, like carnival tickets.
Christ.
I mean,
God
the man
damn
himself.
it.
I mean, to be fair, he must be acutely familiar with how carnivals work, given he's a fucking clown. But, you know, that technicality aside, like, that cannot be a serious position, right? Like, how do... No, I'm not going to go there. But yes, let's just say I disagree with that. I'll keep it at that. I disagree with the honorable Mr. Dorman on his take that castrating crypto from stablecoins would be good, because then it's all casino tickets or whatever.
No, I mean, he has a point, right? If you kill crypto, nothing bad can happen to crypto anymore because it's dead anyway. So that's a good thing, not a bad thing. This is kind of how you have to look at it.
Absolutely. The wisdom just went over my head, as it often does.
Yeah, it's been right in front of us this whole time. We just need to kill crypto to make it resistant to anything.
Yeah, if you take away the value, no one will care. Brilliant. Very helpful. Right, that brings us up to about an hour. Don, any final bits, pieces, things you're watching, things that are keeping you up at night?
No, I'm good.
Excellent. That's all from us. If you enjoyed Casual Friday, leave a like on the video. Usual content stream coming at you next week. Have an excellent weekend, and we'll see you next Friday.
Bye-bye.